Nature documentaries have a list of unwritten rules. Don't stage any scenes. Don't lie about the animal's behavior. And probably most important, don't kill any of the animals. Unfortunately, the production of Walt Disney's White Wilderness broke all of these rules. This film also had one specific scene that was controversial enough to leave a permanent stain on the company. This is the story of how crew members faked scenes, outright abused and even killed animals, and won an Oscar for it. That's right, this movie won an Oscar. On December 21st, 1948, the Walt Disney Company released its first nature documentary, Seal Island. This would be the first of 14 installments in the True Life Adventure series, where Walt Disney Studios would send a crew to different points on the globe to record wildlife shorts and feature-length films. Disney is still creating nature documentaries to this day, but despite the company currently being dedicated to capturing authentic footage, the Disney of the 50s was more than willing to cut a few corners. When documentaries like White Wilderness debuted, the majority of theatergoers believed in the film's authenticity. I mean, it was called True Life Adventures after all. However, it would be revealed to the public decades later that the majority of these documentaries were staged. Disney would create outdoor studios and use trained animals to get most of their shots, and this was especially the case for White Wilderness. Though the movie was openly advertised as being filmed at the top of the world, it was mostly filmed in Alberta, Canada, about 1,100 miles away from the actual tundra. That's like saying I'm shooting a movie in New Jersey, but I actually sneak off to Florida to film it. This was exposed when the TV show The Fifth Estate released an episode titled Cruel Camera in 1982, an expose on animal cruelty in Hollywood. In the episode, they interviewed Roy Disney, the director behind many of the True Life Adventure films.
Well, you just aren't going to go out into the woods and set up a camera and wait for the squirrel to come. So what you do is you create a set, in effect, in nature. You just sort of fence off a part of the forest, and you put some squirrels in there and whatever other animals they are to interact with, and see what they do.
The episode also takes a deep dive into White Wilderness's dreadful production. For example, the expose mentions one scene where a polar bear climbs up an ice slope, loses its grip, and falls. This entire moment was staged. Sure, this stuff may happen in the wild, but as you see this polar bear hit some rough spots on the way down, you have to realize that this isn't natural, but orchestrated by a group of people to entertain an audience. There is also another scene where this baby bear tries to dump a block of snow on this poor cub.
Aim. Bullseye.
While I was watching it, I noticed that the editing looks suspicious. As we slow down the footage, it appears that the snowball pushed off is different than the one that hits the bear. This gives me enough suspicion to say the crew may have also orchestrated this moment. While the majority of Disney documentaries were notorious for staging scenes like this, nothing was more disturbing than what the crew did during the lemming scene. This is a lemming. Cute, right? Well, after being introduced, the narrator says,
For it's said of this tiny animal that it commits mass suicide by rushing into the sea in droves.
Yeah, cover your eyes, kids. According to the documentary, lemmings will migrate for food when a population becomes too big to sustain itself. We are then shown a population of lemmings migrating, being attacked by predators, and then eventually encountering a cliff, and instinctively jumping off in an attempt to go where the food is. This is followed by a shot of the gruesome aftermath, and the narrator saying the survivors will swim out into the Arctic Ocean, believing there is food on the other side, and will eventually drown from exhaustion. This scene is incredibly disturbing, and what's even more disturbing is the context behind it. Lemmings don't commit suicide. It is just an urban legend. But to every legend, there is a grain of truth. It is true that when some lemming populations migrate to find food, sometimes their paths involve crossing a body of water. Lemmings can swim, but occasionally a few will drown. You know, the circle of life. When early Dutch naturalists saw these corpses in the water, they came up with the suicide theory to give a reason as to why they were dead. Since these naturalists did not know lemmings migrated, They also came up with other theories for why they would disappear and reappear. These range from the lemmings being conceived in the sky and fall to Earth like rain, or the idea that lemmings would explode if they got angry. Of course, with modern science, we know this isn't the case. Lemmings just move around when they need food, leaving a few corpses behind as some of them die off naturally. So, the crew cannot film the suicide phenomenon since it doesn't happen in nature. So how did they get this on film? Yeah.
Bill, you worked on a film called White Wilderness, Disney film. Do you recall a scene involving lemmings in that?
Yes.
Did you shoot that?
Right, no. There were about 3 cameramen working on that. So what did you hear about the lemmings?
Can you recreate the scene for us? Do you remember?
I know it was taken. It was a recreated thing done in Canmore in Alberta.
You say recreated, how?
Well, they built a set. It looked like the Arctic. And had a nice painted sky for a background. And bought their lemmings up in Churchill, 25 cents a piece. And shipped them all to Canmore. And they made a little thing like a turntable and ran the lemmings around and filmed the lemming migration to the sea.
The crew, trying to film a nature documentary, was killing nature. The lies don't even stop there. The crew of Cruel Camera contacted a lemming biologist.
Well, the species that's found there, the collared lemming, there's never been any record of it committing suicide or jumping off cliffs. And if you're up in northern Manitoba or the eastern Arctic, there's no cliffs to jump off anyway.
And he stated that the Western Canadian lemming used in the film doesn't even migrate. To add more salt to the wound, the scene was not even filmed by the Arctic Ocean, but in the Bow River.
Because it appears that Walt Disney's version of the life of a lemming is about as far from the truth as the Bow River is from the Arctic.
We've lost a few lemmings, okay. You know, the lemmings probably would have gotten lost anyway. That did get brought on by what could conceivably be defined as an act of cruelty.
White Wilderness, Ben Sharpstein.
In 1959, White Wilderness won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. Despite this award and critical acclaim upon its release, White Wilderness has been greatly criticized for its treatment of wildlife, and the film has been removed from Disney+. The lemming's reputation has never recovered. What would have been a small urban legend has now grown into fact. If we look up the definition of the word, its second definition reads, a person who follows the will of others, especially in a mass movement, and heads straight into a situation or circumstance that is dangerous, stupid, or destructive. We, as a society, have linked these adorable creatures to something sad and dark, and it is all because of a 50s Disney nature documentary. This video is in honor of the lemming, a brave, intelligent, and adorable creature. Hopefully, this video clears their name.
Bogeyland, 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 baby, land, Bogey, Bogeyland, yow.